The Kalahari did not forgive. It stretched for miles in sun-bleached silence. A vast ocean of sand and dust where even the wind carried heat. Trees were twisted skeletons of green. And the cracked earth whispered with the stories of animals that had vanished with the last rains. Lena padded across the brittle ground. Her paws dry and calloused from weeks without shade. Her ribs showed under her golden coat. But her stride was strong. Deliberate. Every motion conserved energy. Every breath was measured. Behind her trotted Tambo, 5 months old and still chubby with youth. His tail flicking with curiosity. His eyes wide, bright, and too innocent for a land like this. They had left the Pride 7 days ago. Water was gone. The Okavango floodplain had shrunk to pockets of muck and flies. The dominant males grew tense. Territorial. When Lena saw the warning signs, snarls, hungry eyes on Tambo, she left. No challenge, no roar, just silence, and the road east toward the whisper of water. There had been signs, antelope tracks, the distant call of guinea fowl, a smell on the wind, and once, faint but unmistakable, the clink of metal. Humans had been there. Tambo didn't understand the urgency. He darted after beetles, chased lizards. Lena growled once, low and firm, and he slowed. But she knew he was thirsty. And tired. They crested a ridge of red sand and looked down upon what once had been industry. The skeleton of a mine. Long abandoned. Rusted metal scaffolds. Concrete ruins half swallowed by sand. A single pole stood leaning. Its warning signs bleached by sun and time. Lena stopped. There was water here once. Used to drill. To wash stone. To quench machines. Now, stillness. Silence. Except, she heard it. A sound. Faint and metallic. Drip, drip. She turned her ears and narrowed her eyes. There, in the center of the site, among rubble and bone-dry tracks, sat an old pit, partially collapsed but intact. Tambo ran ahead before she could stop him. Tambo! She barked. He didn't listen. His legs were quick and clumsy as he darted past broken barrels and sun-baked wires. Skidding to a stop at the rim of the pit. He peered over the edge. Nose twitching. Then the ground shifted. Lena saw the loose gravel just seconds before it gave way. Tambo yelped, then vanished. There was no echo, just the dull thump of small body against hard earth. Lena bounded down the slope, her paws kicking up clouds of ochre dust. She skidded to the pit's edge and looked down. The drop was at least 20 feet. Too steep to climb. The walls, once reinforced with metal, had rusted and collapsed inward. The bottom was a mix of cracked cement and old sludge. Sticky and foul, Tambo lay in the middle of it. Limbs sprawled, whimpering, his paw twisted beneath him. Tambo, her voice wasn't human, but it was filled with a mother's rawness. She paced the rim, roaring once, short, furious, not at him, at the hole, at the desert, at the gods. Tambo whimpered again, his head lifting, eyes blurry. He was alive, but trapped, and Lena could not get to him. Miles away, under a shade canopy at the Kalahari Life Project outpost. Ravi adjusted the straps on Jabu's harness. The elephant swayed lazily, enjoying the attention. Ravi had trained with wildlife units in both India and Kenya. But the Botswana heat was something else entirely. The radio crackled. Old pit site. Movement. Could be lions. Ravi straightened. Lions? There hadn't been reports this far east in months. He grabbed his canteen, a tranquilizer kit, and Jabu's lead rope. "Come on, big guy," he said. "Time to work." Lena remained near the pit the rest of the day. She didn't move far, even when the sun pressed like fire against her back. She growled at circling vultures. She sniffed the edges of rusted ladders and exposed pipes. But there was no safe way down. Tambo had stopped crying. He just lay still now, breathing shallowly. As night fell, the desert cooled, and shadows stretched long across the pit. Stars blinked into view above. Lena curled near the edge, her eyes fixed below. She didn't sleep. At dawn, the vultures returned. More of them. Lena rose, fur bristling, but didn't roar. Instead, she stared upwind. Something was coming. Hoofbeats. But heavy. Not antelope. She turned, and froze. An elephant. And beside it, walking in slow, measured steps, was a human. Ravi saw her from 50 meters. She was bigger than he expected. Dusty, thin, but powerful, and she didn't run. She stood between him and the pit. Tail flicking. Ravi raised his arms slowly. "No harm, Mama," he said. "We're here for your cub." Jabu rumbled low in his chest, a reassuring sound. Lena didn't charge. She watched. She waited. Ravi moved slowly, pulling binoculars. One glance into the pit told him enough. A cub. Injured. Alive. He made a choice. He turned his back on her. And went to work. They used ropes. Jabu helped lower a harness. It took an hour to descend. Longer to secure Tambo, who was too weak to struggle. His leg was likely fractured. Dehydrated. Starving. Lena paced the entire time, never leaving. When Ravi emerged from the pit with the cub in his arms, Lena stepped forward. Jabu trumpeted softly. Ravi didn't run. He placed Tambo on a soft tarp, poured water near his mouth, and stepped back. Lena approached. She sniffed the cub, pressed her nose against his belly, then lay beside him protectively, facing Ravi. It wasn't permission, but it wasn't a threat. It was trust. Fragile. Quiet. Earned in the heat and dust of the Kalahari. Lena roared. It tore from her throat like a storm, echoing across the empty mining site, bouncing off broken concrete and rusted steel. Her voice, full of panic and fury, shook the silent desert, but no one answered. She circled the pit, again and again, a blur of muscle and sand. Her paws scraped at the crumbling edges, claws tearing at the dry earth, trying to carve a path down. Nothing held. The dirt collapsed under her weight. Rocks tumbled into the hole, bouncing harmlessly beside her son. Tambo cried out weakly below. He tried again to stand, but his legs trembled. One of his paws dragged behind him, limp and swollen. His tiny claws scrabbled at the concrete wall. It was slick with dust and oil stains, remnants of the mine. He slipped, fell, gasped. Then he lay still. But he was breathing. Lena saw the rise and fall of his small chest. She paced faster, tail lashing, sides heaving. Her instincts screamed to leap in, to pull him out with her teeth, to shield him from the sun, from the vultures already circling above. But the pit was too deep, and she could do nothing. Nothing. She let out a growl, low, guttural, the kind of sound that shook cubs into stillness. But this time, there was no one to obey, no one to hear. The sun climbed. By midday, the air burned. The desert floor shimmered. Everything shimmered. Even the bones near the fence line looked like they were melting into the dirt. Flies gathered near the rim, where Lena's blood had mixed with dust from her broken claws. Below, Tambo whimpered. He was too hot, too weak. His tongue lolled from his mouth. His breath came in shallow spurts. He pawed at nothing, delirious, his eyes half closed. The shade inside the pit was thin, only hugging one corner. He had tried to crawl there but collapsed halfway. Lena crouched at the edge, her chest low to the ground. She pressed her ear to the earth and listened. She could hear him, breathing, faint mews, the soft scrapes of his body shifting. She closed her eyes. The wind picked up. It swept through the dead mine like a whisper, lifting dry leaves and red dust, filling her nose with the bitter scent of old fuel and copper. It stung her eyes, but she didn't blink. Her face was still, only her ears twitched, tracking the faint, pitiful sounds below. She remembered Tambo's first breath, his first unsteady steps beneath the mopane trees, the way he once jumped at a beetle and landed flat on his belly. Stunned, then burst into a tiny roar of triumph. He had no fear, not yet. He hadn't learned what couldn't be fixed. But now he was learning. He was learning that not everything could be climbed, that not every fall was followed by a recovery, that even mothers couldn't always protect. Lena licked her dry lips. She stood again, roared again, and again. She clawed the ground harder, digging until blood soaked the sand beneath her paws. She dug until her shoulders cramped, until her legs gave out and she collapsed at the rim of the pit. Panting, the sun mocked them both. It pressed against their backs with cruel indifference. The vultures circled lower. Tambo didn't cry anymore. That was worse. Lena blinked the dust from her eyes. Her face was caked in grit. Her mouth was dry. She curled her body against the pit's edge, lowering herself until her nose nearly touched the rim. Then she made a sound, soft, low, like the noise she used when Tambo dreamed too loud or rolled away from her warmth at night. A sound of comfort, a sound of presence. From below, a small ear twitched. Lena waited. The wind howled and died again. And then, barely louder than the breeze, "Mrhh." Tambo's voice. He was still there, still holding on. Lena exhaled and lowered her head all the way, resting it on the scorched ground. Her eyes were glassy now, red-rimmed. She didn't close them, she just stared into the pit, as if her gaze alone might carry strength to her cub. There was no one else. No lions, No humans. No gods. Just a mother and her son, divided by an ancient wound in the earth and the silence of the Kalahari. Hours passed. The sky began to turn. The sun dipped westward, slowly melting into shades of orange and red. The temperature dropped by degrees. But the exhaustion did not. Lena rose one more time. She walked the rim again. Not frantically, slowly, each step precise. She sniffed at the metal, testing, calculating. She searched for anything that might hold. And far off, in the distance, just beneath the wind, a tremor in the air. Not thunder, not hooves. A sound unfamiliar in this dry place. A rumble. She turned her ears toward it. Alert, unsure. And there, barely more than a shimmer on the horizon, a great shape moved through the dusk. The Kalahari blurred by in waves of red dust and gold light as Ravi guided the jeep over the cracked path. Eyes squinting against the afternoon glare. Behind the vehicle, tethered but calm, walked Jabu, the massive African elephant that had been Ravi's companion in rescue missions for over 5 years. They were heading north. After months of rehabilitation, Jabu was ready to return to the wild, or at least the closest thing to it in the protected rainforests that bordered the delta. This was supposed to be a farewell trip. But fate had a different plan. It started as a tremor in the air, a distant, raw sound that sent a chill up Ravi's spine despite the heat. A lion's roar. He eased off the throttle and pulled to the side of the dirt road. Cutting the engine, the silence that followed made the sound stand out even more clearly, not just a roar, but a plea, desperate, repeating. Ravi stood on the jeep's runner and scanned the horizon. In the shimmer of heat, something moved, a shape, large, golden, pacing tight circles around a jagged hole in the earth. He grabbed his binoculars. The image sharpened. A lioness, thin, dust-covered, moving with the frantic energy of a mother on the edge. Then he saw her more clearly, a faint scar across her left shoulder. Just beneath the fur, he knew that mark. Lena, he whispered. A year ago, he had freed her from a steel poacher's snare. Her leg nearly severed. She had been half-starved, feral with pain. But she'd lived. He had watched her limp away into the brush, wild and unbound. Most lions never returned to human sight. But here she was. And something was wrong. He jumped down from the jeep and clapped his hand softly on Jabu's side. "Come, boy, we've got work to do." They moved as a team, slow, quiet, purposeful. As Ravi approached the pit, Lena turned sharply, body low, growling. "Easy," he called gently, raising both hands. "It's me, you know me." Lena's growl faltered. She didn't charge. She didn't flee. She stood her ground, muscles trembling, tail lashing the air. Ravi kept his eyes low, non-threatening, and stepped closer until he could see the pit's edge. Then his stomach dropped. A cub, Tambo, barely conscious, lying in the shade of the pit wall, his sides rising and falling in shallow rhythm. "Damn it," Ravi muttered, scanning the rim. The sides were unstable, too steep, no time for a proper team. A med unit wouldn't reach them for hours, maybe longer. And the cub didn't have hours. He looked at Lena. Her eyes were on him now. Not angry. Not afraid. Just waiting. "Okay," he said, turning to Jabu. "It's you and me." Ravi had trained Jabu for rescue work. But this would test them both. He looped a rope around Jabu's harness and tied the other end to a wide sling he quickly fashioned from canvas and padding from the Jeep's emergency kit. With Lena watching every move, Ravi slowly lowered the sling into the pit, using Jabu's immense strength and calm to guide it gently. Dust filled the air as the makeshift rig swung down. Lena paced but didn't interfere. She growled once when the canvas touched the ground beside her cub. But Ravi murmured to her again. Softly, steadily, "He's going to be all right. Let me help him, like I helped you." Then, without waiting, he lowered himself in, hand over hand, dropping into the pit beside the cub. The air was thick and hot at the bottom. Tambo whimpered as Ravi knelt beside him. A quick scan told him what he feared: dehydration, exhaustion, a likely sprain or fracture in the back leg. He dipped a cloth in the water bottle strapped to his side and dribbled it along Tambo's lips. The cub licked weakly. "That's it. Good boy." He worked quickly, wrapping Tambo gently in the sling, securing him with practiced hands. When the signal was ready, Ravi called up to Jabu with a single, sharp whistle. The sling began to rise. Swaying slightly, Tambo moaned softly, but held still. Lena stepped closer, muscles tense. The moment the cub reached the rim, she was there, sniffing, inspecting, gently licking his ear. Ravi climbed up after them. He stood panting, coated in dust and sweat, just a few feet from one of Africa's most dangerous predators, and she looked right past him. At her son, at Hope. Lena licked Tambo's face, then gently nuzzled his small body against her chest. Ravi watched them silently, heart pounding with the aftershock of adrenaline. Jabu rumbled behind him, shifting his weight with a satisfied grunt. For several long minutes, no one moved. Then Ravi stepped forward and knelt, placing a small first aid kit beside Lena. She didn't growl. She looked at him, and slowly, carefully, allowed him to unwrap the cloth around Tambo's leg and apply a cold compress. Ravi didn't speak. He didn't need to. The bond was there. Not of ownership. Not of mastery. But of memory. Of trust reborn in crisis. Lena let him finish, then nudged the kit aside gently with her paw. "Enough." Ravi stood, bowed his head slightly, and backed away. Jabu followed. As they returned to the jeep, Ravi looked back one last time. Lena lay beside her cub now, one paw draped across him. Her eyes followed Ravi as he mounted the driver's seat. She didn't roar. She didn't flee. She just watched. And in her eyes was no fear. Only fire. Only trust. Only the return of hope. The sun dipped toward the western horizon, painting the sky in copper and blood orange. The Kalahari's wind stirred, cooler now, but dry as ever. Dust rolled across the abandoned mining site like silent fog. Ravi stood still at the edge of the pit, sweat drying on his brow. Eyes locked with Lena's. They had no words, only tension and breath. Behind him, Jabu waited, calm, massive, watching with the wisdom of something older than fear. "Tambo's alive," Ravi said softly, "but we don't have time. It's you now, big guy." He turned toward the elephant, placing a hand on Jabu's thick shoulder. "Let's bring him home." Jabu stepped forward. The ground trembled under his weight. But not harshly. His movements were careful, measured. He approached the pit in deliberate paces, each step a silent negotiation with Lena, who stood rigid, ears high, tail stiff. She didn't roar, she didn't lunge, she held her ground, her eyes sharp but not hostile. Watching, waiting. Jabu stopped beside the edge. He tilted his great head, curling his trunk, and lowered it slowly, first hovering just above the hole, then gently pressing the tip against the air. He wasn't acting blindly, he was listening, feeling the depth, the air, the scent, the heat rising from below. Then his trunk moved lower, inch by inch, curling like a question into the pit's mouth. Below, Tambo stirred. The cub's eyes fluttered open. He sniffed the air. The scent was new, but familiar. Earth, bark, dust, and beneath it, Ravi, the human who had once brushed thorns from his mother's paw. And something else, calm, ancient, safe. A deep rumble echoed from above. Jabu. Tambo's ears twitched, and then the trunk touched him. Gently, softly, brushing across his flank like a gust of warm wind. Jabu circled once, then again, wrapping carefully just beneath the cub's belly. Ravi held his breath. Lena stepped forward half a pace. Tense, but silent. Jabu lifted. The motion was fluid, strong but delicate. The pit gave up a faint cry of falling dirt as Tambo rose from the shadowed depth. Coated in dust, limbs limp but breathing, sand crumbled, stone shifted, but Jabu never wavered. With a slow, steady arc, he brought the cub upward, into the dying light, his trunk flexing to counterbalance each sway of weight. Ravi shielded his eyes as the dust fell, like a soft rain, shimmering around them in sheets of orange light. Then the cub was clear, whole, alive. The moment Tambo touched the earth, Lena moved. She sprinted forward, silent, sure, and reached her son before Ravi could take a step. Her nose met his belly first. A deep, guttural sound broke from her throat, not a roar, but something deeper, a hum, a pulse of instinct and love. She nuzzled his face, licked his ears, then licked him again. Her body curled protectively around his, and he responded weakly, pressing into her warmth. They stayed that way, entwined, breathing in unison, as if they'd both been returned to the world at the same time. Ravi lowered his head. Jabu stepped back, his trunk coiling once more before relaxing at his side. He let out a long exhale that ruffled the grass at his feet. No one spoke. There was only wind and breath and dust. And life. A few minutes passed before Ravi approached again. Lena looked up at him. Her body wrapped around Tambo like a second skin. Her eyes were calmer now. She didn't growl. She didn't bare teeth. She blinked once. Slowly. Ravi crouched a few meters away, placing a canteen on the ground. Then he pulled a small satchel from his side and laid out gauze. A water pack. And powdered nutrients. I won't touch him, he said, unless you let me. Lena didn't move. She lowered her head again, resting her muzzle on Tambo's shoulder. Ravi backed away. The rescue was complete. And what came next, he understood, was not his to decide. As the sun dipped fully below the dunes, Ravi stood beside Jabu and watched the lioness clean her cub in slow, methodical strokes. She wasn't just nurturing, she was restoring him. Tambo blinked up at her, then at the sky. The stars were beginning to blink into place, vast and cold and ancient above them. He made a small noise, something like a purr, rough and raspy, and pressed his face into her chest. Jabu let out a low, thoughtful rumble beside Ravi. "You did good," Ravi said. "We all did." The elephant responded with a slow sway of his head, then turned toward the jeep, clearly ready to rest. Ravi cast one last glance back. Lena met his eyes again. She didn't thank him, but she didn't have to. The trust was enough. Later that night, under a brittle sky of stars, Ravi wrote in his field notebook by lantern light. Entry 187 Kalahari Life Project. Subject: Lena, lioness. Tambo, cub. Jabu, elephant. Rescue successful. No sedation used. No injuries to humans or support animals. Unprecedented behavior. Lena allowed close proximity to cub post-rescue. No aggression. Showed recognition of previous encounter. Snare removal 2023. Jabu demonstrated depth and restraint beyond training. Lift executed with minimal stress on cub. Coordination flawless. Conclusion: trust between species not only possible, but visible, when survival meets understanding. He paused, then added one last line. Sometimes, the only hand that can reach across a pit of silence is not a hand at all. The desert, at dusk, held its breath. The wind had softened, and even the sand seemed to rest. The mining site, once full of cries and motion, was quiet now, its edges draped in gold light and lengthening shadows. Ravi sat beside Jabu near the jeep, his hand resting gently on the elephant's warm, dusty brow. Jabu's ears fanned out in the breeze. His trunk coiled lazily in the sand. His massive frame rumbled with each breath, steady as the earth itself. Ravi let out a quiet sigh. Not exhaustion, gratitude. "You saved a life today, old friend," he whispered, running his fingers along the folds of Jabu's wrinkled skin. "Maybe too." A soft chuff of breath escaped Jabu's trunk. Like agreement, or maybe just acknowledgement of the long day behind them. Ravi turned his gaze to the figures across the clearing. Lena was standing again. Tambo leaned against her front leg. Still weak, but upright, his eyes half-lidded with fatigue and safety. Lena looked over her shoulder, her golden eyes locking onto Ravi's one last time. It wasn't a long stare, but it was deep. It carried memory, and something beyond. A farewell, perhaps, or a thank you that words couldn't hold. Then she turned back to the land. Together, Lioness and cub began walking toward the field of yellow grass at the edge of the desert. Lena walked slow, careful, her body brushing against Tambo's, guiding him with each step. The cub stumbled, but she steadied him, never breaking rhythm. They didn't look back. They didn't need to. Ravi watched them grow smaller and smaller against the wide canvas of the Kalahari. The sky now stained in lavender and fire. 2 figures in gold. Then just shadows. Then gone. Ravi stood and reached into the jeep for a long, metal signpost. He pressed it firmly into the ground near the edge of the pit, wiping the dust from the bold red letters. Danger, unstable ground. Do not approach. Beneath that, he scribbled coordinates with a grease marker and snapped a quick photo with his GPS-linked satphone. He opened a secure message thread with the Kalahari Life Project station and sent a short but urgent text. Abandoned mining site located. Open shaft. Lioness plus cub rescued. Immediate reinforcement required. Coordinates attached. Then, finally, he lowered the phone, looked once more toward the field, and nodded to himself. The desert had given him a story. Now it was his job to protect the place it happened. The team arrived 2 hours later in a cloud of dust and diesel. 4 conservation officers, 2 engineers, and a local guide. They brought steel fencing, portable welders, and a motion-triggered camera system in a shockproof case. Ravi stayed just long enough to help unpack the fencing, while others argued over which angle was safest to weld. He walked to the edge of the pit one more time and crouched there, peering into its dark, empty mouth. No sound now. No cub. No cries. Only echoes in the dust. He stood, dusted his hands, and stepped back. "Seal it up," he said. "It's done what it came to do." They left just before midnight, their convoy kicking up light trails beneath the stars. Ravi rode in silence, watching the brush blur past in the moonlight. Jabu followed in the support truck behind them, fed and resting, his great head swaying with the road's rhythm. Ravi leaned his head back against the seat. He wasn't thinking about the pit anymore, or the rescue, or even the data they would analyze later. He was thinking about 3 beings: Lena, Tambo, Jabu. 3 lives from 3 worlds. Predator, prey, human, each shaped by wounds, by exile, by fate. Each pulled together by something no training manual could explain. And somehow, in one forgotten corner of a sunburnt desert, they had rewritten the rules. They had chosen trust where instinct said run, compassion where caution said retreat. They had chosen life. Together, back at base, Ravi filed his final report just before dawn. The language was technical, clear, clinical, exactly what it needed to be. But as he closed the document, he opened a blank page. Just for himself. He titled it, "Echoes in the Dust," and he wrote, "Some stories are made of data and footage and time-stamped GPS logs. Others are carved into the earth and written in breath. This one belongs to the second kind. In the Kalahari, where the bones of the land remember everything. A lioness once trusted a man. A cub once survived a fall. And an elephant, who owed us nothing, reached across the gap. They left no footprints by morning. Only echoes. He saved the file, turned off the light, and stepped outside. The stars had begun to fade. And somewhere, far from fences and cameras, a lioness moved through tall grass, guiding her son toward dawn.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.